Welcome to the Barcode Podcast, where our sole purpose is to educate and equip emerging consumer brands so they have the knowledge and tools they need to thrive in the marketplace. I'm Ben Ponder, and at Barcode, we're here to give early stage and growth stage consumer brands the unfair advantage that the right information can provide. When you're competing against huge CPG brands to get your product on a store shelf, you need all the insight and advantages you can get. And our guest today is the perfect person to share those insights. Matt Gase started out in big CPG and is now using that expertise to run a challenger hummus brand here in Austin called Lantana. So Matt Gase has had a distinguished career in CPG writ large. He is a veteran of big CPG and held a number of increasingly senior positions in large companies such as, at the time, Ralston Purina, now Nestlé Purina, and also Conagra, and then also ran Commemorative Brands, which made the class ring that your high school and college very likely used or sold.
Balfour.
Balfour, that's right. And then was the CEO at Stubb's, legendary barbecue, Austin favorite, and shepherded that team through an acquisition by McCormick, the big spice company. And after that acquisition, made a very strategic and deliberate decision to enter into a more of a challenger brand setting, and we'll certainly talk about that more, and took over the helm of a company that at the time was Eat Well, Embrace Life Hummus.
Remembered it. Rebranded
as Lantana Foods, and you have likely seen it in the store. It has the striped rim around it and that sort of thing. So Matt leads that team and recruited an all-star cast to surround him. And they're doing really good things that we'll talk about a little bit too. So that just as a brief intro, you'll get more color commentary as we continue. Before we get into more detail, I know you shared a particularly interesting story from your days. I believe it was with Purina when you were getting started in Singapore and launching that business in Southeast Asia, or in the Asia Pacific region. And some of the learnings that you had, where you assumed certain things about how to launch a brand in a new market. Can you share some of that story with them?
Sure.
Yeah.
And the takeaway of what I'm going to share with you shows the flat spot in the big food companies. It's just because I was on the big food side, and I'm like, holy crap, I want to compete against me. That was my conclusion. I was like, I could beat me if I wasn't part of Purina. Set up shop, hired a local guy, and said, okay, I've got the playbook. I'm Purina. I'm Purina Dog Chow, the number one global brand of dog chow. And it was going to be dogs in Singapore because it just culturally, cats in Malaysia, dogs in Singapore. So I'm focusing on dogs in Singapore. And in the playbook, there you go, 20 pound bag, top seller, lowest price of goods anywhere. Purina is a monster. 20 pound bag, dog chow. I call on cold storage. Well, Joe Wong did. He was my man in Cairo, so to speak. And they were like, "Oh, thank God, Purina. There's this growing pet population. We don't know how to take advantage of it and have people buy pet food from my stores." Cold storage is like the H-E-B of Singapore. It's the best way to describe them. And they gave me the whole friggin' bottom shelf and next shelf. It was like I took pictures, different sort of cameras back then. This was in the 1990s, and I'm like, I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting for the reorders, and kept on going to stores. I thought, boy, these people really know how to stock well. They restock so well. This is amazing. I started to notice after a while some dust, and then worse, some bugs. Singapore is 97 degrees, 365 days a year, 95% humidity, and almost every kibble, if it doesn't maintain a certain temperature, is going to grow weevils. Well, my stuff hadn't sold in 3 weeks. Cold storage said, come pick it up. Get it out of here. I mean, it was a complete bomb bust. I did not take photos of that, by the way. And said, what the hell happened? I talked to some locals. I was, I'm a Michigan Wolverine, so I was, started up with some local Singaporeans, the Michigan Alumni Club, and I said, introduce me to some friends who have pets. I need to figure this out. I don't know what the heck happened. And they did. They let me talk to their friends, and I said, can I come visit you? And I met with 3 families separately. In all cases, Singapore, you live in high rises. You live in 700 square foot apartments. The kitchen, by the way, is not air conditioned. And as I'm up there visiting these folks with their dogs, I noticed a couple things right away. One, the dog's small because the room's really small. It's 700 square feet, and they live on the 15th floor. So they got to carry the little dog down to do the dog's number. And where does the dog do a number? On this really small little piece of grass that everybody has to share. And I'm like, what do you feed this dog? And they went to their very hot kitchen and showed me this product. And I got the same takeaway at the next and the same takeaway at the next. And I said, okay, I know where I need to go. One family said, they bought their dog from this breeder. So I went to the breeder and I just sort of watched families coming in, and the breeder said, okay, now you have this new puppy, you've got to feed the dog this. Eukanuba, it's a 1 kilo bag developed specifically for small dogs, and if you don't feed this dog this food, your dog's going to die. They didn't say it quite that way, but it was like, here you are. You're like, Singaporeans were just new to owning pets. They didn't know. Then I went and checked out the other channel where I realized people were buying their pet food. And it was at the vet. And you can imagine the same thing. There, though, it was Hill Science Diet. And the vet had exclusivity for Hill Science Diet. So imagine the person coming in, they have their new puppy, and the vet's saying, hey, great, dog's looking super. What are you feeding it? Oh, I'm feeding it Eukanuba. Ooh, no. Dog might die. You got to feed it Hill Science Diet. 1 kilo bag, small kibble. Oh, by the way, the small kibble means, nutrient dense, very digestible. So I learned enough to know I've got absolutely the wrong product. Flew to Denver, where Purina's big pet food facility was, and said, guys, all right, I've got your 20-pound bag. That's not working in a market that needs a 1 kilo size bag. And I know you guys don't do metric, but I need a 1 kilo. 2, your kibble's designed for a large lab, which is the average size dog in the US. These little puppies can't even get it in their mouths. The kibble's too big. I need a small kibble. I need a nutrient-dense kibble. I need something that's going to be very digestible. And I need it in a form and fill bag versus our paper bags where weevils can crawl in and spread. And they're like, there's no way we're going to do that. We can't do that. We can't give you what your market needs to sell product. It took me literally a year. I had to go to Purina Korea, Purina Hong Kong, Purina China, Purina Japan, and said, guys, we have to put a volume together. So a year for me to get the right product into the market to be able to compete. And this is Purina. This is like a monster company. The largest pet food company in the world could not fathom, that plant just could not understand, why isn't our 20-pound baked dog chow good enough for you? Throughout my time with Big Food, you would have always a roadblock, either at ops, because it's production driven and this is what you get, this is all you're going to get, or there's going to be finance. I mean, there's so many hurdles to go through, and I lived them all in, a year.
So as a small brand, your main advantage then is being nimble and responsive in the market, right?
For sure,
Yeah.
for sure. Even if your cost is going to be higher. No one's going to beat low cost, but who cares?
Right.
If you can get the right product for the market,
Right.
That's the number one thing.
So let's pivot a little bit to, so you move to Stubbs eventually, and you have a sort of what is seen as this craft Texas barbecue sauce that was going up against some heavy duty competition, also Kraft and others. How did you create a strategic plan that enabled you to compete against, again, much larger companies?
Well, having worked for a big company, it helps to know what might be going on with some companies, with pretty much every company. And so, first I hired a good broad range of people, folks that have experience. And if there's a bit of advice I give you is don't shy away from talent. It's as much as your budget can afford, and don't shy away from somebody that has experience. That's not a bad thing to have, especially in the food industry where relationships, go deep, broad and deep in many cases. So I had a really good eclectic team in place. We cleaned up the ingredients, which hadn't been done, which all you guys do. Your food's so super clean. That's the big companies really struggle. It's like, what do you mean I have to take a high fructose corn syrup? And that's from the VP of Ops. I'm not doing that. Or the purchasing group. My high fructose corn syrup costs so much cheaper than this cane sugar. I'm not going to do that. So you get a lot of resistance. They eventually get there, and they're getting there now. Big Food's really waking up. But speed kills, and we took advantage of being first to take out high fructose, gluten-free, non-GMO project. We were out in front of that. Data is something that I had my VP of marketing came from Clorox, which was Casey Masterpiece. You just borrowing some of the things that Big Food does well, or Big Beverage, or Big Beauty, is leverage data, and we're big enough to be able to afford IRI or Nielsen or Spins or whatever you use. Even if you can't get it monthly, this is a great sharing community. Get somebody, say, hey, can you get me a Spins report from even 6 months old to give you a snapshot? Because there's gold there. And there was like, wow, look at this. 30% of the growth in barbecue sauce is coming from 10% of the volume, and is sweet and spicy. We didn't have a sweet and spicy at all. We had sweet, we had spicy, and the biggest, fastest growing area. But we wouldn't have seen that if it wasn't for looking at the data and seeing what was happening. So we launched Sweet Heat. So we filled out the portfolio. We knew who to attack. And that's something that, again, maybe my Big Food background, was helpful. So I'll tell you another story. When I was at Purina, there are certain brands, and even at Conagra Foods, if you're like, you want to be a rock star, you want Healthy Choice, right? You don't want Patio Burrito. Patio Burrito is not the brand you want. So if you're an aspiring, guy or gal, and you want to
that's a career dead end.
That's a career dead end.
Yeah.
So I remember I was sitting in the cafeteria at Checkerboard Square, and one of my buddies came in, and he's like, holy crap, they just gave me the Moist and Meaty brand. He was devastated, and we were all like, devastated. Oh shit, you got Moist and Meaty? Really? Whoa, man. So Moist and Meaty was a pet food. I think it's still out there. It's an extruded wet food that's dry. It's in a little bag.
Everything about it is wrong.
It's wrong. It's wrong. And it was really doing bad. And this poor guy got it. And so what's he going to do with that brand? He's got to harvest it. That's all he could do. He has to figure out, okay, how am I going to not lose as much revenue in the new year as I lost this year? And how can I, manage to make the same profit with reduced sales? And that's a really good thing to try to get promoted.
A little less moist and a little less meaty. Yeah.
Hey boss, I manage declines really well. So the data tells you that. You see it. You see it all day long. It's like, if I'm in the pet food business, I'm going to go after Moist and Meaty, because I know that brand's dead. It's just going to hang. It's barely hanging on, and some poor guy or gal's got to manage it for a year and a half before they get the hell off it.
A lot of these brands, a lot of upstart brands, are premium, and they need to be premium for a lot of economic reasons, margin, et cetera. How do you go after a legacy, often value-priced brand when you're a premium brand?
It's shelf space. It's just plain shelf space. So at Stubb's, you looked at it and it's like, okay, you got Sweet Baby Ray's. They're growing. They're a monster. I'm not going to get shelf space from Sweet Baby Ray's. And the category wasn't growing, so it's absolutely a share play. It wasn't like, barbecue sauce was woohoo and, you're behind a Mack truck and just catching a draft. So
a share play is the category is what it is. The retailer's not giving you extra shelf space. You've got your set, and it's somebody's got to go for you to hit that shelf.
Yeah, you've got to take business away from someone else. You've got to say, hey, if I'm going to grow 5%, someone's going to decline 5%, sort of thing. And looking at it, I found my moist and meaties. I said, I know Clorox isn't supporting Casey Masterpiece. It is obvious as hell that business has been in decline for 2 years. It's down 10% every year. That poor product manager is dying to get off the desk. I'm going after that. So in every one of our category reviews, where's the premium section? You need a premium section. And where's the space come from? It's coming from Open Pit. It's coming from Hunt's. It's coming from those brands where that
are already declining.
They're already declining, and that company's making a bet on other brands. That big company is saying, okay, I'm not going to waste any money trying to invest and grow with these brands. I'm putting my bet here. And those brands are vulnerable, and that's what we went after. Same thing with that Lantana. I mean, Sabra's a 65% share. They're a monster in hummus. I mean, it's Sabra and then everybody else. Well,
and Sabra is owned by
Strauss, which is a big Israeli firm in a joint venture with PepsiCo. And you had number 2 brand was Tribe, owned by Nestlé. Number 3 was Athenos, owned by Kraft. Number 4 was Garden Fresh, owned by Campbell Soup. They just acquired, Garden Fresh. But, again, similar story. You could start seeing Tribe and Garden Fresh and Athenos. I mean, Kraft. They turned all of their Athenos attention to feta cheese. You just see it in their marketing and their trade spend. Everything they're doing is Athenos is the moist and meaty of Heinz Kraft. Is anybody here from Heinz Kraft? Yeah. Well, I married a Greek, so we like feta. But we in our category presentations, look, you don't need this. In those cases, it wasn't just like taking 3 facings of Casey Masterpiece away. We were able to just plain wipe a brand out and say, we're unique, we're fun, flavorful, vibrant, culinary, totally different. You don't need another chickpea hummus.
Same old. Yeah, no differentiation between the other
sea of beige, you don't need it. But it was helpful to have visibility to that performance over time. That really is instructive.
So talk a little bit about, I know the previous name was very long and difficult to remember, and you recognized that the brand equity actually existed in the striped packaging. Talk about what you recognized there and how you built off of that.
Again, I'm trying to think in terms of an answer that could be helpful to y'all here. So it's not so much, I think, what I did, but what we had to overcome. It's obvious the brand Eat Well, Embrace Life was a mouthful. It had zero aided, unaided awareness. All our equity was in this striped lid. Think about search, search engine optimization, right? Eat Well, good luck finding hummus under Eat Well. Don't do it under Embrace Life. Just trust me. So it just was a non-starter.
So what have you learned from this Lantana journey so far? Again, you've entered into a new category against some really big entrenched players. Like, what's different about hummus? What's interesting about what you guys are doing at Lantana?
Deli's wild. Does anybody have a brand playing in the deli? It's like the Wild West. Nothing's planogrammed at all. In some cases, the decisions are being made by the deli manager. So we have deli managers that like us or don't like us or want this flavor or that flavor. So there's no consistency. You have Cedars and Boar's Head. Boar's Head's that's a beast. They all have DSD, so they're going in there takes me back to my early bread days when I was with a high quality bread called Wonder Bread, and that was all DSD. And I remember the bread wars.
And DSD, for those of you who aren't in the industry, is direct store delivery.
And you would have, the brand X dislike this guy from brand Y, and with the razor blade just go straight across the loaves of bread to stale them out. And so what
like
you don't
cartel behavior.
It was bad. But you put up you put up your pad of coupons, or you're doing a News America, and the DSD guy's like, no, you're not. That's coming down. So the deli's wild. The deli's fun. Now I've got kids who are sort of your ages, 25, 23, and 20, and they're like, they're the hummus consumers. I mean, and to be able to play plant-based, vegan, fresh is fun. And
there's a tailwind behind it.
There
is,
unlike some of the others, for sure. We know where to pick our battles. We're not going to pick on Sabra, that's for sure. But we're in a unique position, and the founders of our business, they came from some of these hummus companies, and very traditional hummus guys, and they said, something, let's blaspheme. Let's make hummus without chickpea. Chickpea, tahini, lemon, garlic, traditional hummus. Sesame, well, tahini. And they said, let's make it without chickpea. Let's do an edamame hummus. Let's do a black bean hummus with some sort of Cubano sort of topping. Let's do a yellow lentil hummus. Let's take a white bean hummus, dial in some carrot, some sriracha sauce, and have sriracha carrot, which has given us the license to, they built this foundation where we now have a cauliflower hummus, and we have a hatch hummus, and you probably seen, we have one now, but other young startups have chocolate hummus. Delighted by, or Boar's Head. So it's fun in the sense of where you can take it. Some companies are just, we're traditional, we're not. We're sort of the Ben and Jerry's.
You aren't restricted by protecting your contribution margin for your particular brand, which again, these bigger brand managers have to do. Yeah.
Contribution margin, look it up, that's key. That's key, not just for the big companies, but companies that might want to buy you one day. That's a magic metric. I want to look at your contribution margin, which is your net sales less cost of goods, and less your marketing spend, because they're going to take out all the other stuff.
Yeah, in layman's terms, how much you're contributing to the overall big pie.
Right.
One of our Barcode members asked Matt a question that was on everyone's minds. Why go after the dying brands to get shelf space instead of going against the big guy in the category? Why not become Sabra? Why be David when you can be Goliath? Here's what Matt said.
Well, so it's like I'd be coming up, and the highest I could reach would probably be the kneecap. So, which can do some damage, don't get me wrong. Kneecaps are vulnerable. But there's, in a weird way, I'd rather, say category manager, buyer, or just, hey, all you need in hummus. Sabra, market leader, we're not going to displace a 65 share. They're $800 million. I'm a fraction. I'm a rounding error for Sabra. So $800 million beast, market leader, they dictate hummus. All you need is Sabra. All you need is private label. Have a local brand, like a grandma's, and us, because we're different. So we're going after, the vulnerable to gain our incremental SKUs, to get our hatch hummus on shelf. And we're not going to get it from Sabra. And oh, by the way, they're so big, their velocities are, my highest velocity item is like our black bean, and that velocity is still going to be less than their, I don't know, pizza taco flavored Sabra. They're just too big.
So I think one application of that metaphor is, in the David and Goliath story, at the beginning, David tries to put on the armor, and it doesn't work so well for him, right? So you don't go head to head against, like, apples to apples against a major competitor like that, but you can be clever and crafty and creative to find other ways in, and over time, and I think there is a strategy, especially against a very large competitor, that as long as possible, you kind of want to fly under the radar, because they have people, maybe they're not openly slicing bread loaves, but they have people in the store who have a lot of clout, who can, at the store level and at that kind of national category manager level, who can slow your growth down. So the more you can fly under the radar and be perceived as a niche item, they're like, oh, they're not taking any.
We reckon if we stay, it's weird, but we reckon if we stay under 10% market share, we're flying under the radar. And don't forget, Athenos is Kraft Heinz. That's still a Goliath. And Tribe is Nestle. That's still a Goliath. There's just a bunch of Goliaths out there.
Another great question from the audience here. How do you add a new product to an established line? Specifically, when Matt was at Stubb's, they grew the barbecue sauce and then expanded out and created a line of spice rubs. Is it a good idea to add another product line like that? And if so, how do you do it? Do you ease into the market, or do you try to make a big splash?
So at Stubb's, when I use the word test, everybody went around saying, oh shit, he's launching another product. I tested a ton. So we never swung for the fences.
How do you test?
We test, we pick a retailer, and we're friendly with them, and we said, hey, we're launching this range of Stubb's spice rubs, pork rub, steak rub, what have you. We're going to give you an exclusive for 6 months. In return for that, all we ask is for data. This time, that way you don't have to buy spins. You get it. It's like quid pro quo. You're giving them something that maybe Kroger doesn't have or Albertsons doesn't have, but in return for that, you get this. And our marinades, we had a sort of a stodgy, group of marinades, portfolio of marinades, and we said, well, let's test the Green Hatch chili. And it was good old Whole Foods here, the Southwest Division, and they gave us a shot, and it took off. It did really well. And so we then pivot really fast and went. We didn't go national. We don't have the money for that. We went to Phoenix, Arizona. Went to Southern Cal. We went to places we thought would naturally be a hatch. But we also really screwed up and launched some dogs out there, and you just you fail fast. We thought, okay, let's get cute with Lantana with a sunflower chickpea. We'll be chickpea, but we'll be different. Instead of tahini, we'll use sunflower. And people are like, what's this? This is not chickpea. This isn't. Who put sunflower in this thing? And it was like, boom, kill it. And when you test, you don't go big in terms of you don't do the same. You just live with higher costs of labels, higher costs of lids. In our case, it's just
short runs, digital, whatever.
Right? And you go for learnings, and that's something the big companies can't do. They go through oh my God, let's first do bases tests, and then let's do some in-home use tests, and then we're going to do a regional, and it take they're getting better, but it could take. I know when I was at Conagra, 18 months to get a new product out there.
What drives these sort of new trendy things like a chocolate hummus? Is it FOMO? Is there any other sort of basis for those product innovation decisions?
Well, so chocolate hummus became a thing. The two ladies that started Delighted By were out in the market for 4 years, and then they got in Shark Tank, and Mark Cuban wrote the check, and that got the tongues wagging. It's what in the heck's is chocolate hummus? And people were talking chocolate hummus before they could buy chocolate hummus. And they got great distribution into Publix, and that got more. It's talk about people, the purists are saying, are you kidding me? Chocolate hummus? And yet, by the same token, other people are saying, I don't like hummus, but this sort of eats like a Hunt's snack pack pudding. And it's made with legumes, and it has a healthy fat, and so is it necessarily bad? So it's a real sort of mixed bag. We're watching this going, did we miss the boat? Yeah, we missed the boat. We didn't jump on it. I was chocolate hummus? No. Now it's Boar's Head. Boar's Head's number one selling SKU is their chocolate hummus. They've essentially taken Delight to buy out, unfortunately for those two young ladies, because of Boar's Head's strength. And it's like 30% of their sales. And it does. It eats like chocolate pudding. So if that's your thing, go for it. We missed that boat. We do have chocolate hummus, but it's just because the customers asked for it. That doesn't carry Boar's Head.
As a startup, in addition to creating a product that solves a problem for your consumer, you need to be obsessed with data. You likely won't be able to get it directly from the grocery stores your product is sold in, but you've got to be scrappy and get any information you can. Talk to people. Figure out how people are using your product. Learn about your competitors. Here, Matt talks about how he could have done things differently with Purina Dog Chow when he was in Singapore.
So I was in Singapore in 92, 93. So the data, I didn't have the benefit of data. I screwed up by not going on the street, knocking on doors. I should have hit the streets. I've got, my 10-pound bag, my 20-pound bag. I didn't have optionality. Purina only then was waking themselves up to Eukanuba and Hillside Style. They lost the plot in the U.S. because, they were the grocery brand. And Hills, which Colgate-Palmolive, they were really smart in owning the vet. And Imes Eukanuba, which was then Paul Imes and sold to P&G, he owned the breeders. But that was just developing the U.S.
And so each of those are distinct channels. There's a channel strategy for each of those brands.
Correct.
Right?
And Purina's channel was the grocery store. Purina was built on dog chow, cow chow, pig chow, chicken chow, the old feed stores, and some bright bulb in the 50s said, why don't we just move the dog and cat chow to grocery stores so people don't have to drive all the way to the feed stores to get their food. So my orientation was that. I came from within that. And so I started with people buy pet food in grocery stores, and here's the world leading product. But to your point, I wouldn't have had a solution. I would have learned sooner, holy shit, I don't have the right product. I would have avoided the Weevil episode. But I still was working for a company, and there are companies out there right now that just don't have the capability to create the right product for a growing niche category.
And one of the fundamental axioms of Barcode and this community is it is an unfair advantage when you are solving your own problem or a problem that you have a personal connection to. And so that ethnographic research that you're talking about is sort of baked in when you have that connection, because you went out there and you had a small dog in Singapore and your dog couldn't eat large kibble Purina puppy chow, and so you solve that problem effectively. Whatever your domain is, that's part of what you guys are doing. And so you are your focus group. Your friends and kind of next level contacts are your focus group. They're the core consumer, and you should have that rapid iterative product feedback that's baked into your business model.
Well, I give props to the founders because they created this really unique hummus. So we had strong points of difference. We were able to say, listen, you've got Sabra here, you've got Tribe, which is just like Sabra, it's chickpea. This has pine nuts, and that guy has pine nuts, and and Pita Pal has chickpea with pine nuts, and Athenos has chickpea with pine nuts, and we're black bean, and we've got some apricot, pineapple, sesame seed topping, and it's spicy, and you don't have that. So it was pretty easy for anybody who has a true point of difference. It's not easy, it's easier. If I was coming in with like, hey, I've got the best tasting chickpea traditional hummus that's called Lantana, we'd had a lot tougher go at it.
That's actually a huge point, because I see this way too often. So You make a cookie, you make a whatever the thing is, and your sales pitch is, my cookie tastes better than Snackwell's or whatever the thing is. It's not enough. It's not enough. If you are incrementally better than $1 billion brand, it is not enough. You have to be zagging while everyone else is zigging. And if it feels like a lateral substitution, then as your friend, I'm going to say this, you're wasting years, productive years of your life, because it's not going to go anywhere. If you're not different at this like small stage, it's going to be tough. So part of, again, Matt's point is, if they were just making another slightly better version, oh, this is truly hummus because my grandma's from this Greek island and they made it better there. Man, I hope that you're like married to a shipping magnate or something, because you're going to need a lot of resources to get that to take off.
There are so many small retailers out there. There are. Here in Texas, they're in California, they're in Michigan. If you don't see them take off, you better figure it out, because your story's got to be built on success. And there's a word called velocity that is real key. That's, both from a category buyer's point of view and from a prospective buyer down the road for your business, is how are those turns happening? So you want to, if you get a small test, make it work.
And in general, a large retailer is not going to bring you on. There are rare exceptions, but for the most part, if you don't have those incremental growth stories of local to regional to some different things there, you're not getting a national rollout at Kroger because your hummus tastes good. It's just not how it works. They want to know, again, they're placing bets that they're taking something off their shelf that is making them millions to hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases. And in order to make that bet that I'm going to lose money by taking this off the shelf and I'm going to replace it with you, I need data. And if you're not sold anywhere and have no velocity data, no track record of actually being able to fulfill the orders that are placed, then they're actually making a foolish bet if they're a category manager. So you're creating a story that makes you a really strong bet.
A few takeaways from this conversation. 1. If your product flops, as Purina Dog Chow did for Matt when he first got to Singapore, get curious. Start asking questions. Figure out why the product doesn't fit the market, and then change the product. Number 2, you have a distinct advantage as a startup: speed. When you see a problem, you have the speed to market advantage that a huge CPG doesn't have. Test, get information, and get your product out there. And number 3, your authentic story matters. It's another advantage the big CPG companies don't have. Thank you so much for listening to the Barcode Podcast, where we share information and conversations that educate and equip emerging consumer brands so they have the knowledge and tools they need to thrive in the marketplace.